Live from the Rocky Mountains, this is Redacted. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
It is 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Good to see all of you guys. We've got a busy show for you on this Thursday. Yes, the outgoing Biden administration saying goodbye. President Biden issuing his farewell address last night. But it's what's going on behind the scenes, basically trying to torpedo President Trump before he takes office. A number of major steps have just been revealed by the Daily Mail and an exclusive report from the Daily Mail. It's really, really deeply disturbing. So we're going to talk about all of that. Plus, we also saw like a number of reporters, like friend of the show, good friend of the show, Max Blumenthal, who just took the piss out of Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
I mean, it's one epic. Of those. It's a barn burner. And there's no excuse not to now. Today was the last press briefing for Karine Jean-Pierre and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And this is your last chance to tell them you've been speaking for genocide. Way to go.
We got hauled out of there.
We see you and your warmongering ways, not just for Gaza, obviously, for Ukraine. Like, they had to hear it. There was no other chance to do it. So you had to, again, burn the barn on the way out.
I just will say, I mean, you can check it out later if you want. Go watch the full thing over on Max Blumenthal's X account if you want to see him take down Blinken and Matt Miller. But we've got more to talk about.
Yes, we're going to talk about why the left is losing. The media literally cannot figure it out. They're like, some kind of populist. We don't know. We don't know why the left is losing in 73 democracies around the world. Speaking of democracy, the TikTok ban is set to go into effect this weekend. And so American users have been connecting with actual Chinese people through Red Note in this kind of beautiful and punk rock shared human connectivity. It's amazing. Clayton and I both signed up for Red Note because we're like, F you don't get to censor us and tell us where to be. You don't want us to see Chinese people? We'll go find more Chinese people. How about that?
It's kind of like it's shown through the rhetoric. It's like, oh, Russia is your enemy, China is your enemy. It's like, wait a minute, we're connecting with them and they're great people. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm going to show you some of these videos that is rocking the world of people who have bought this. China is our enemy. So we have that to talk about.
Also, you know, the prophet, Pastor Biggs, who came out in March of 2024 and said that President Trump was going to be shot. There was going to be an assassination attempt against his life. It was going to hit him in the ear. He would fall to the ground. He would then rise, and then he would win the election. Yeah, he predicted that in March. And then, of course, that happened in the middle of the summer in July. He's now back with a very, very deeply troubling prophecy. We're going to play it for you in just a few minutes here on the show and what it portends for Election Day. Don't want to scare anybody, but it is actually quite unnerving. So we're going to play it for you in his own words coming up. But first,
we want to tell you about our sponsor, Home Title Lock, because if you're a homeowner, when is the last time you checked in on the title of your home? This is the legal document that's recorded with the county to show who owns the house. If the answer is never, that's why they do a title search before you can buy a house to see who has an interest in that house. Well, the FBI is reporting that people are committing fraud by adding non-owners to the title, which would not only give them a stake in your house, allow them to quit claim it or share it in some way. It's really dangerous. And it's a dangerous way for you to lose your probably one main asset on your balance sheet. Well, that's where Home Title Lock comes in. They will make sure that nobody can do this and give you a rundown of who's on title on your home. That's all it takes for your home to be transferred out of your name. And it's scary and it's allowed. And in fact, the idea of selling something that you don't own, that's where we get the expression, if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. Because in fact, back in the day, in the 1920s, scammers were quit claiming their rights to the Brooklyn Bridge when they didn't own it and people were actually buying it. So this is a scam that's been around in some iteration for a long time. So you can get a free title history report and a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection today by going to HomeTitleLock.com. Use our promo code Redacted or click on the description. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code Redacted. You'll get a free title history report plus a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection. Make sure that no ne'er-do-wells put their name to your hard-earned assets. So check them out, and we thank them for supporting our show.
Well, we'll get to Biden's awful farewell address in a second, but he said in his speech that he wants a smooth transition of power, and he's rooting for President Trump because he loves America. That's what he said. He loves America. That was a bald-faced lie. Of course, we know that the Biden team has laid the groundwork to slow down President Trump. According to the Daily Mail, which just published their exclusive report about Biden's sneaky and dirty plot to slow down President Trump on day one. I'm just going to go through this because it's deeply disturbing, and we knew that some of this was already happening, but now we have confirmation from the Biden administration. So President Joe Biden enacted a series of roadblocks to slow down Donald Trump's agenda during the president-elect's first days in the White House, despite his steadfast promise to cooperate with the incoming administration. The moves include changing the order of succession in federal agencies so Biden's staffers will be in charge before Trump's nominees can be confirmed, and enacting federal rules that will take the new administration months to overturn. Also doled out billions in federal funds on clean energy initiatives and other Biden priorities. So let's unpack this, okay? President Biden, in an interview with USA Today last week, laughed when news outlets basically asked him about Trump trying to overturn his initiatives. He's like, I think he's going to have a problem with that. Trump's going to have a hard time undoing a lot, I think. So what did he know at the time? Well, of course, he knew at the time that he had already put in place a number of safeguards to make sure that Trump couldn't undo a lot of his stuff. Biden has orders of succession. So he's updated the order of succession at several federal agencies, rearranging the reporting order to ensure that officials friendly to his policies are in charge while Trump gets his cabinet nominees confirmed. When a president leaves office, all of his cabinet nominees and political appointees resign so the incoming president can put his own people in place. Okay, so basically not going to do that then. Not going to let that happen.
Not going to work here anymore.
Spending. Let's talk about the money that's being spent right now. So all of the dollars, President Biden is trying to spend as much as federal funds as possible from his 4 major legislative accomplishments so he can dictate where the taxpayer money goes, according to this report, instead of leaving it to be spent by Trump. They're spending as much money as possible for the American Rescue Plan, the infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. The 4 laws, more than $4 trillion of government spending. Unbelievable. And so the White House is saying that the administration has already awarded 98% of this funding. They've just flown it out there. They're just pushing it out there. $288 billion in infrastructure funding that won't be available until in the fiscal year 2025. $14 billion for the Inflation Reduction Act after fiscal year 2025. Another $10 billion for the CHIPS funding for the fiscal years 2025 and 2026. So all of this money the Biden administration has allocated. All of it.
Against better judgment of pretty much anyone who studies economics. Ron Paul says in his book, anytime consumer spending and inflation is too high, the government has to cut spending too, or no fix-it measure will be effective. And so they don't care. They don't care that this is basically a tax on the middle class. So
no, they don't care at all. So, I mean, just think about the amount of spending that they're putting in place here. I mean, it's so deeply troubling. And there are major warning signs right now in this economy. We talk about the commercial real estate sector. The amount of vacancies right now in the commercial real estate sector is unbelievable. The Trends Journal just published their big forecast for the year, and they had in there, this is a major bomb about to go off because of all of these loans that are coming due from the commercial real estate side, and you have all of these vacancies. So all of these offices are just they're 40% vacant right now, just sitting there, and these loans are coming due. What's going to happen to those banks when all of them start hitting with these commercial loans? There's a major recession hitting the United States here, and I think Trump is not going to have any choice but to. I mean, he's going to be handed a giant bag full of garbage, basically, on the economy. We saw the consumer spending numbers or the consumer price numbers from
inflation
December.
in December was up 2.9% from the previous year. It's still been circling this 3% number. Now that's every month in 2024. Our prices got higher by an average of 3%. Every single month. So if you thought in January 2024 life was expensive, it only proceeded to get worse for most of us, for all of us.
So that's major pieces, but let's talk about the federal law firing people. This is a big piece of it because when we talked about DOJ, we talked about, getting rid of these departments and cutting these employees, these federal employees. So this, to me, is one of the most underhanded things that Biden has done now to basically, to slow down President Trump. Many of the rules being made in a way that would take an act of Congress or a new rule to undo them. One of those Biden rules is tied to federal workers that he just put in place. Trump wants to have the power to easily fire federal workers, which has brought fears that he will fire career employees who have different political ideologies. During the final weeks of his first term, Trump issued an executive order creating a new class of federal workers known as Schedule F. These staffers would be exempt from the country's traditional merit-based civil service program, and opponents argued it was an attempt to hire and fire people based on their political loyalty. Well, Biden came in, he rescinded that order. He then took it one step further in the spring when he issued a new rule that strengthens existing rights for career federal workers, making it clear that civil service protections cannot be taken away from employees unless they give them up voluntarily. So the difficulty in firing employees is going to be very, very bad. Very, very difficult for President Trump to come in and get rid of some of these people. And we a couple of weeks ago here on the show, we talked about, is it called burrowing? Do you guys remember the term that there was
yes.
I think Politico was talking about how these Biden appointees, these Obama appointees were going to start burrowing into these different agencies.
Yes.
They leave sort of the appointed positions and they burrow in.
Right.
And that's a big concern. So a lot of these Biden Obama types are going to try to burrow into these different agencies and try to undermine the agenda. Anyway, deeply troubling. So we had the farewell address last night. What a disaster that was.
Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, no, the interview you did yesterday, I can't remember the guy's name right off, the CIA whistleblower, he talked about that, where like these people like burrow in and they don't care who the president is. They just wait 4 years and then they come back out. Like this, it's why you can't get this like deep state agenda taken care of, is because they just hide and wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like prairie dogs.
Right. Well, President Biden's farewell speech was full of hypocrisies, but I'm not sure he even knew it or understood. He was clearly focused on just reading the teleprompter and getting through it. But even the lone conservative voice on CNN shut down all of the sycophants who tried to speak out on behalf of it and said, this is a terrible speech and this is the legacy he will leave. Watch Scott Jennings on CNN.
I think the way he's leaving office has been, frankly, pretty terrible. He's going to be remembered for a few things. But politically, it's mostly for when he was vice president, he and Obama sort of ushering in the Trump era initially. And then as he's leaving office as president, bringing back Trump and Trumpism stronger and more popular than ever. Today, Biden has like a 61% disapproval, and Trump is over a 50% approval and more popular, and his ideology is more popular than it's ever been. If everything you say is true, the Democrats should have had no trouble getting reelected in this election, yet they were.
It's an issue of a communications failure.
I know, and for Democrats, it's always been about communication and no introspection about the policies that led to him leaving office as one of the most unpopular presidents. When I watch this tonight, I remain astonished that he, his family, and other people around him thought he could ever run for another term. I mean, there's no way he could serve another 6 months, let alone another 4 years. The fact that they pursued that farce for as long as they did, to me, remains one of the most astonishing things about this term. So,
even the liberals there who want to say something were just like, yeah, we can't say anything against that. And
no, but that his family would have allowed him to get this far. I mean, watching that speech last night, you're like, this is your farewell address? Like, this is your farewell address to the nation. And you're a mess. You're an absolute disaster. You thought you could have gotten through another 4 years. Everyone knew you couldn't, but you kept it hidden from all of us.
Even he looks uncomfortable and not sure that he's going to get through it. But we're going to watch some of the more notable things that he says. CNN, even without Jennings, is admitting that the Biden legacy is leaving a mess. Look at this headline. They say that Biden warned of oligarchs, but some officials worry he may have created one because he snubbed Elon Musk and Tesla so many times that he's made a dangerous enemy. Now watch some of the hypocritical things that he says. Specifically, I kind of screamed at the television when he warned about oligarchies. Watch.
That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. and the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before.
Okay. He who concentrated power in the hands of Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and asked social media to downrank and censor anything that may have been against the biopharmaceutical complex. He's worried now about oligarchs. When he enabled them, he wielded those oligarchs, the existing oligarchs, we're going to name them soon. He bent them over the knee and made them do what the Biden administration wanted them. But now it's so rich that he's worried about them. Here's where he warns about how these oligarchs have promised to stop censorship. And he says, this is a problem. Watch.
You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit.
Just like you did, sir, Mr. President. That's exact. I was so outraged at that comment. So you're trying to draw similarities between Eisenhower's warning of the military-industrial complex upon leaving office to the tech-industrial complex, which you worked hand in glove. You built a backdoor portal to go into Facebook and to Twitter to censor, malign individuals who didn't agree with your COVID policies, with your masking policies, your lockdown policies, all of your biopharmaceutical policies around vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
Absolute garbage and infuriating. And then he's talking about, misinformation. He's worried about now, oh my God, Facebook is pulling back on fact checkers. Fact checkers, which we have talked about on this show, have direct connections with the intelligence state, right out of the CIA. Yes. Fact checkers. Yeah. So you're worried about the rise of the tech, some sort of a tech industrial complex that you worked hand in glove to build?
Also, I want to get a little bit theoretical here, but I think that most communication theorists would agree that the truth is usually not drowned out by lies. In fact, just the opposite. John Stuart Mills famously said that in a free information exchange, the truth will rise. But that means we have to be free to hear everything in order to parse out the truth for ourselves. There should never be somebody there gatekeeping information and saying what is true and what is not. That was also one of the tenets of Thomas Jefferson, free information exchange. So he's saying the truth is out there, but we are too stupid to know it because there are too many people screaming lies and we can't tell for ourselves. So that's what he thinks. That's what Democrats think of the average person, is that they cannot think for themselves and they need these big brother gatekeepers to tell us. And I reject that wholeheartedly. That's not to say, though, that I'm completely comfortable with this oligarchy. It's just not that I think that Democrats did any better. I am concerned about the sort of tech sycophants that are circling around Trump right now in the Trump administration when they had worked against him before. We saw that, at least with Mark Zuckerberg. We saw that with Amazon downranking books that were critical of Democrats. So now that so the Daily Mail is reporting that these 5 oligarchs, we're going to call them, are going to be present at the inauguration. And so I made a game of it on X to see if we can sort of make these into Game of Thrones figures, because you should always be worried about the people that are surrounding power and have an aim to it that may be antithetical to what the aim of the general populace is. So, we've got Zuckerberg, we've got Musk, we've got Sam Altman, we've got Bezos, so I'm making this fun game. Please ring in. But at the same time, I want to reject this revisionist history of the Biden administration. I'm also just worried about this concentration of power, these sort of sharks circling the Trump administration. How do you feel about it?
I was concerned about it. I mean, the idea that Elon Musk, who has these big government contracts and launches these satellites into space and has this sort of cushy relationship with that. I've been deeply disturbed about the Palantir connections, of course, with J.D. Vance and, Peter Thiel and all of that. We've had Whitney Webb here on the show where we've gone into detail about that. Remember that these companies were born out of the intelligence state. Google started as a contract with the CIA. So,
but notice there's no one from Google here.
Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why there's no one from Microsoft there either.
No one from Microsoft, one from Google.
But Tim Cook from Apple I think he donated $1 million for his inauguration, for Trump's inauguration. So I don't know. It's deeply troubling because we think we have free speech in this country, and it's whatever gatekeepers. We see that with Elon Musk right now. I mean,
so let's look at these five faces again and think okay, they bent to the will of the Democrats. Are they now saying they completely are pro free speech? Are we now trusting them because of the platform in which we decided to reject the Democrats? I don't know. That doesn't feel comfortable either. We can't be what they call the woke right here, where we're like, well, as long as it's not Democrats, we're for it, right? That's not what we're about here on Redacted. We're independents. So let us know, and also let us know how you feel about Elon Musk as Tyrion Lannister, because Philip vehemently rejected him as Ned Stark.
I
said no
he's
way.
not Ned
I
Stark.
told you what I thought about it.
Yeah. You didn't ring in on Tyrion Lannister. He's like a game player. I don't know. Is that one okay?
No, that's because I already said I think he's kind of a little whiny. He reminds me of a Joffrey, just a spoiled rich kid that thinks he's tough, but just whines. And
I've heard him as Lord Varys. Anyway, this is a fun game, but I don't want to alienate anyone who didn't watch Game of Thrones.
Watch Game of Thrones. Also, where's Vivek? Vivek Ramaswamy's disappeared.
No.
Where is he?
Well, I assume he'll be there, but he doesn't represent any one platform in the same way. He doesn't wield any power over us at this point in time. I don't feel like he's one of the oligarchs that could, I don't know, put his thumb down.
Somebody get that guy a platform then.
Right.
We got to complete the set. Can he take over Blue Sky maybe? I don't know.
We need
Blue Sky home to all these pedophiles now. It's funny where all the pedophiles left X, I guess, or a lot of them, and they went over to Blue Sky. So there's been a number of outings of pedophiles on Blue Sky, a platform that we will never use on this show. Okay, we've got more news to get to. I want to talk about this new threat against Donald Trump. We're going to get there in a second. And I know some people in the chat were like, no, you mean, wait a minute, you're going to talk about that story? Yes, we're going to talk about this story. We're going to lay it out. You can do with it what you want. We'll get there in a second. But first, I'm really troubled about what's happening in the United States economy right now. You're seeing gold prices again surging today, silver prices surging today. Big concerns over what's about to happen with the U.S. dollar. I know everyone's sort of excited about what's going to happen with Trump and the economy. You got tariffs coming in. You got the new cabinet team coming in as well. But what about commercial real estate? What's going to happen when all of those offices are emptied and all these loans come due? How are we going to pay for all of these $4 trillion outlays that the Biden administration just put on President Trump? Very big concerns in that regard. That's why so many central banks right now are buying up as much gold and silver as they can get their hands on. And our friends at Lear Capital can help you do the very same thing. All you need to do is just give them a phone call. They will help you. They will just educate you on whether or not you should buy precious metals. Maybe it's not even a fit for you. They'll talk to you on the phone. Do you want to have gold and silver coins sent right to your house that you can store in your gun safe, or you can have it stored off-site in a protected facility? They're an American company. They're fantastic. They are a patriotic company. So when you call them, you're not going to get outsourced to New Zealand or somewhere else to talk to somebody. You're going to talk to an American team. Call their 800 number, 1-800-613-3557. 24/7. And they just put together a full report on the incoming Trump plan with tariffs and everything, what this looks like for you and your family. Just go get the free report, even if you don't even work with them. Just go get the free report. Go to LearRedacted.com, and you can even talk to them about getting $15,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified purchase. So thanks to Lear Capital for supporting us here at Redacted. We appreciate it. Well, the same man who had spot-on accuracy about Trump's assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania before it happened is back again with a troubling new message about a massive assassination attempt on President Trump in Washington, D.C. in some capacity. So just for, I know people are like, wait, I can't believe you're going to tell this story. Well, it's shocking. Here was this pastor back in March of 2024, okay, a full, March, April, May, June, July, about 5 or 6 months before the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. Here he was, spot on, telling exactly what was about to happen. Watch. This is March.
I saw Trump rising up, and then I saw an attempt on his life. This bullet flew by his ear, and it came so close to his head that it busted his eardrum. And I saw he fell to his knees during this time frame, and he started worshiping the Lord. He got radically born again during this time frame. I'm talking, people say he's saved now, but he becomes really on fire for Jesus, for what I saw coming. And then I saw people interceding when I saw him winning the presidency through great. The Lord showed me it would go clear into the summer. Great persecution would come on him through the judges and through the law and all these people trying to sue him and all this stuff. But there would be a stop to it, and things would start to break free come toward the fall. And then I saw him winning the election through the Patriots coming out and voting, and then there will be a great economy crash.
So we haven't seen the great economy crash just yet. And I believe that that's coming. I absolutely believe that's coming based on the data. He also talked about Trump losing his shoes. Remember that? Like during the event, like he lost his shoes as well. Like this guy. Okay. I mean, when you hear that, it's jaw dropping. Here he said this in March, a full few months before it actually happened. Well, now Pastor Biggs is issuing another grave warning, claiming that he's seen a vision of a massive sort of orchestrated attack, a coordinated attack with multiple different men targeting Trump's inauguration and some of his properties, whether it's Trump Towers or Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago, we don't know. He talks about trucks being filled with massive amounts of fertilizer hidden in underground garages, poised to strike. Okay, I'm just sort of setting it up. I'm going to play it for you, and you make your own determinations of this. Watch.
It all started, I was just worshiping and just praying like I normally do, y'all. And all of a sudden, it was like, poof. And I told my wife, I said, get the phone. You got to record it. I could see, and it was the vision was putting all out in front of me. And I saw farming equipment. I saw massive farming equipment that was, it looked like on the East Coast, this farming equipment was. And there were silos, and the Lord said, I want you to focus on fertilizer. And all of a sudden, it was like everything was coming at me very fast. And I could see these men buying lots of fertilizer since this summer over the course of quite a while. It looked like I could see. So you're not able to see the vision. So I have to describe what I saw. I forget, y'all, so bear with me. I saw trees. I saw leaves on the trees. I saw the summer grass growing. It was hot outside. And I saw these men collecting fertilizer through different places so that they would not be detected. Okay? It was like different locations buying fertilizer in bulk as much as they could without drawing suspicion. That's the way I would say it. Massive dump trucks with separation of in the back of these dump trucks, separation with 50-gallon drums, all filled with different kind of chemicals to make what was happened in Oklahoma City. I saw these men with these vests on in the front cab of the truck. vest on, and they had explosives on these vests. And there was 2 men in the truck, and they took the truck and they used it to go through police barricade and military barricades in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Someone in our chat room says, Karen Ann says he also prophesied about Vegas and New Orleans and that they'd happen on the same day. Okay. So anyway, that's that. The FBI, the Secret Service, Capitol Hill Police say they have multiple credible threats and they have ramped up to high alert status. They're putting additional staff on hand because of this. The FBI, of course, like last week, warning about major threats right now in the United States. So what do they know? What will they share it with the American people? Anyway, we're sharing that with you. You can take it as you want. We could all sort of pray and make sure, come together as, as a mental collective here and sort of pray that nothing happens to our country. That's something powerful that we could all do and send our energy in that direction. So there.
I believe, without getting too, spiritual, that there are many levels of existence, and some people experience time linearly and some people do not. And some people can see a probability of things happening. And I think that all of us can affect that probability with our own prayer, our own meditation, our own intention. And so I don't think that anything like this is a foregone conclusion. And so I think that, there's a lot of proof that people can feel into different probabilities of the future. So I don't think that any of us should be too scared about that. Let us know how you feel.
Yeah, one person in the chat saying this guy is a charlatan. Maybe he is. It's hard to argue, though, when you have video from March.
Yeah, with a very specific prediction.
Laying out specifically what happened. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So who knows? But anyway, it's out there and you can do with it what you want.
Right. All right. Well, in response to the TikTok ban, that's not easy to say. No. Let me try it again. In response to the TikTok ban slated to take place over the weekend, young people are downloading Red Note, and it's kind of a joke's on you to the government and the censorship regime. So the government's excuse to ban TikTok is that it is Chinese, even though it's not. Red Note is actually Chinese. It's owned by 2 private citizens. It's not owned by the Chinese government, but that's still the excuse that the American government has used to take it from our app store. The irony here is that the ban on TikTok, people are calling themselves TikTok refugees. Like, where do I go now, right? And I'm not going to go to Zuckerberg's platform. I'm not going to go to Musk's. What do I do? And so they are now going to a legitimately Chinese social network, and it's opening their eyes to government propaganda. Now, we all know that the TikTok ban had nothing to do with China. Everything to do with Israel. Once the Free Palestine conversation started to rise up on TikTok, the American government took action and went after it. Well, here is Red Note.
Also called, the Little Red Book, which could be construed as Mao's Little Red Book, right?
Yes, yeah. Indeed. So it's a little bit like, hey, you don't get to tell me, I'll see for myself about China. 2 unintended consequences have been showing up in this universal energetic law that what you resist persists. One, not only is there anti-Israel content there, even though the owners are reportedly pro-Israel, they're allowing it. You can say whatever you want against Israel there. And in fact, Israelis have been attacked on the platform, and maybe not in not a great way. I'm not saying that this should be allowed, but it is being allowed there. It's also full of government propaganda busters. We're told, here in the United States that the Chinese live terribly. They have no freedom. They hate us. They hate our way of life. Well, they're showing us for themselves that that's actually not true. And they're showing us that they think that it's us that lives under oppressive conditions. Watch this woman figuring that out for herself after some time on Red Note.
The Chinese said that Americans are not free because the American TikTok refugees asked the Chinese, what stereotypes do you have about us? And I'm thinking they're going to say, like, we're fat and we like junk food. No. They said that we think that we are free, but we are not, that we live under an oligarchy, and that we essentially live in a corporation. And we're fat.
Okay, so that's what the Chinese are saying they think about us. Here's another woman saying she's obsessed with these shopping halls, grocery shopping halls, showing that the Chinese have access to affordable food. Watch.
Listen, I didn't think that the culture shock of joining Red Note would be watching grocery hauls. Chinese grocery hauls are insane because they can actually afford food. You guys, what one woman, it would have cost me, oh my God. This is so sad. America is, I already knew, but it's like so sad. We're such a sad excuse for our country.
So they want...
I'm finding this so interesting.
They want communism. That's what they'd rather have.
I don't think that's what they're saying. It's not a pro-communist message. They're just saying that we're told the Chinese have no money, they have no access, they have no freedom, that they hate us. And actually they do have access to affordable living. And they have good medical care that's affordable. Watch this one man point that out now that he's connected and can see how much we pay for just an ambulance service. Watch.
Hello, fellows. In my last video comments, some of you share your medical bill and that the cost of ambulance shocked me, man. Look at this, $9,000 for an ambulance and the insulin. That's like 3 months of income for an average American. And this, $900 just for an appointment and painkillers. In China, it only costs about $10. And this, in China, we never worry about the ambulance charges. Today, I will show you how much the ambulance costs in Shanghai, which is the most expensive city in China. Let's look at this table I made by using the official data. You guys can take a screenshot for later review. This is why some Chinese followers commented yesterday, it only costs around $50 in China for ambulance services. You know, those politicians should have taken care of your people first. At the end, salute to Luigi and wish the best to you all. Please follow me for more sharings.
$50, you guys, for an ambulance. $50. Can you imagine? Because they don't search the prices there. I paid $900 for a Tylenol the night I gave birth. $900 because of my medical insurance. What?
Well, that guy's saluting Luigi, the guy that shot.
I didn't catch that was Luigi.
Unless it's somebody else.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I thought it was someone. I thought it was a friend that he was exchanging information with. I apologize. I do not give a shout out to Luigi. Here's another, again, nice unintended message that's passing between the airwaves that our government absolutely doesn't want us to hear, is that the Chinese don't hate us. Watch this, man.
All right, what up, fellas? It's Nick again. Look, just one quick word before calling it a day. This is probably one of the saddest things I've read in the comment section in the past few days. That I've seen plenty of people saying, so after all these years, it turned out that you don't hate us. You Chinese people, you don't hate us Americans. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Where does that even come from? You think that we hate you? That was you believe all these years? Is that something that your media has been feeding you? That we hate you? You believed it? Come on, you should have known better than that. We don't hate you. If anything, we don't like some of the decisions from your leadership, which you too are victim of. But why would we hate you? So, I can't believe I have to say this. No, we don't hate you. There you go.
So what do you think of that?
Well, that's uplifting. I mean, that's a message you could get behind, like Chinese people, like real Chinese people that aren't part of like the Chinese
we don't know this yet, right? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Because you're humping over there, and I don't like it. So tell me what you're humping about. You don't like this segment clearly, and you're.
Can I finish a thought?
Yeah,
please?
do it.
For crying out loud, my throat is sore, and I'm trying to get I keep coughing, by the way. No, I like that. I like that message from these guys. I like the message that if human beings can talk to one another. It would be amazing to hear what North Koreans think of of Americans.
Yeah.
Right. If we were able to have that free back and forth conversation. As Donald Trump always talks about, talking with other people. What's the harm in talking to other people, right? We can all come together and sort of share our differences, right? I think that's exciting. If in fact these people are legitimate, these are legitimate users and not like members of some sort of the CCP or something, or they're part of the Chinese Communist Party in some larger capacity. I'm troubled by the tens of thousands of illegal Chinese immigrants who've poured into the United States, military-age men who are in the United States. That I'm deeply troubled about. We've covered that on the show. So if everything's so great and cushy inside of China, then why are we seeing this massive influx of illegal Chinese into the United States? I'm just curious about that. I would love maybe they can have that dialogue too. That'd be interesting.
You're extrapolating something I'm not trying to say. I'm not saying their life is so awesome we should all move to China. I'm saying that these main government narratives that they are completely unhappy and oppressed and they, are starving may not be true, and that we may have more in common than less, that we all just want to feed our families and have access to affordable medical care. Not that China does it better or worse, but that we can see for ourselves.
Yeah, I think it'd be great for us to see.
You're making,
information is power.
Oh, sorry. My daughter, she explained it like this. She's like, a lot of people are going to Red Note because the government was like, well, we're going to try to keep this Chinese company from getting your information. And so we're going to take away something that you enjoy. And so people are just like, you know what? We'll just go give it directly to them. How about that? It's like an FU.
Yeah. Well, Fox News today was like, why would people go there? This is actually Chinese. And their pundits were like, these people don't care. They won't be told what to do. It is like a middle finger. And yes, we don't know that these people are not part of communist China propaganda. We don't know that, but we can sort of get on board with like, we don't hate you. Well, we don't hate you either. How about we don't want a war? That might be kind of nice, right?
Yeah. I just have a lot of thoughts about this. I mean, I worked closely with some Chinese individuals who I communicate regularly with, and I would ask them about their government. I'd ask them, they're like, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about that on this platform. They're very scared. I mean, they're very scared of the censorship. They're very scared of what the government is monitoring, whether it's WeChat or WhatsApp or whatever else that they are able to have in China, and they're not able to communicate openly and honestly about it. And they're like, yeah, if I ever sit down and have lunch with you someday, I'll tell you, because they're just so terrified about their government. So I'm just kind of curious how they're able to sort of speak so freely on this Chinese app. Like, how is that possible? Don't you question that? Like they're under censorship controls. How are they able to speak so freely on this Chinese app like this?
What did you see that was? Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, I'm just going to say that I don't think they are. I don't think that anybody, like the whole point of it from what my daughter was saying, and she has her finger on the pulse of her generation fairly well, and it has nothing to do with. It's not like that they think that Red Note is more free speech. I don't think that anybody's thinking that the people that are on Red Note can speak freely about the Chinese government, and there's just things they wouldn't bring up or couldn't bring up. The point is that the U.S. government said you can't do TikTok anymore because it's a Chinese company, and nobody believed that. None of her generation believed that. They all knew it had to do with the Free Palestine, and so they're literally going to. They're like, oh, if you're going to take away this thing because it's Chinese, well, this thing is clearly Chinese. Now, what are you going to do?
Okay, so that makes sense. Really I like that.
We had the unintended consequence of making friends. Nothing I've shown you here is pro-communist government. It's like, well, European countries have cheaper ambulances than America. That's just the way it is. That's not pro-Chinese. That's anti-American establishment, right? And to say we don't hate you, that's not even pro-Chinese government. These are just human connections outside of government.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think, I agree with Philip's point on this, that's maybe the real story here, is that Americans were told by Congress that this is TikTok is Chinese, when the real story, as we've talked to Congressman Thomas Massie here on the show, is that it's because of the outrage against the genocide in Gaza. And it's because of the Israeli lobby that they were forced to get rid of TikTok, and they blamed it on China. So then all of these Americans are like, we know the real story. You're a bunch of effing idiots in Congress. You don't think we know what's really going on here. So you want us to, you're worried about a Chinese company? Fine. We'll go over to Red Note, a actual Chinese company that has Red Note, which is Red Book, which is like Mao's little red book in the freaking title, is a big FU.
And it's worth noting that the bill that passed that allows Congress to ban TikTok would allow them to ban Red Note too as soon as they turn their attention on
How long until that happens?
Right.
Like next week?
Yeah.
What happened to free speech in this country, though? Like, we can't use whatever apps we want, to be able to share information?
No, clearly
apparently not.
Clearly not. So,
yeah, no, look at
some of the people in the chat were...
Oh yeah,
I forgot about
remember
that.
that? Like the Amazon where it was hosted, the Apple Store, everybody took it down for reasons that were never proven.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and someone in the chat says, "Well, Clayton, how do you know it's so bad in China?" You're right. I don't. I mean, I'm just telling you what my friends who live in China, who are Chinese, were telling me about censorship.
My masseuse is Chinese, and she's like, she loves America. She's like, I would never go back there. She had to go back and visit, and she didn't even want to go back. She was just talking about how much she didn't like it there.
Well, you just did an interview with a Chinese woman who left and who wrote a book called...
Yes, but she left decades ago. She has a very unique perspective. I think we should consider all perspectives. We have Carl Jha on the show all the time, who busts up a lot of these narratives about social credit score, the narratives about the Uyghurs we know has been myth busted. So I think we should all understand that we don't know what we don't know, right? And just sort of have some humility about it.
But we do know that the Israeli lobby pushed to get TikTok banned. That is a fact.
Yeah.
So we absolutely know that that's the case, and they tried to blame it on China. So again, that we absolutely do know. Someone in the chat just said, thank you for your super chat. Dad's Homebrew says, I don't think Clayton likes this segment.
Yeah, I don't like your attitude about this segment. So if that's what we're doing, we're married. I'm sorry if we are.
Can I answer him for crying out loud? I love this segment because I think that this is what makes great this communication back and forth here. Like, that's to me what's so great is like have a conversation back and forth and not agree on everything.
All right, but if we're allowed to huff and puff and blow your house down over somebody else's segment, then you just wait.
I'm not feeling
what we're allowed
well
to do.
Need some water over here.
Okay,
some water.
Where's my fade to black button? I can't find my fade to black.
Water.
All right, we're going to talk about the losing left, why The Guardian thinks that 73 democracies has seen the leftist parties come out of power. We're going to talk about that in a second, but first.
I like that. I'm going to tell you about our sponsor, our friends over at Aura, because, my God, I've been getting all these freaking spam calls lately. Like, what the heck is going on? Like, how many of you guys are getting spam calls on a regular basis? I got one today from freaking Sweden all of a sudden. Like, what the hell's going on? I don't answer these calls. And Aura has built-in spam blockers. I'm telling you, these guys are fantastic. You know, you think you trust a company, and then you hear about all these data breaches right there with your personal information, your phone number's out there on the dark web somewhere. And that's where Aura comes in. Aura, if you've never experienced like identity theft or any of this, it's stunning how much it can ruin your life and how much it's like it can really impact you. Aura, what's amazing about Aura is that they have a data broker opt-out feature. It will help you remove your personal information from data brokers. When people search sites that can sell your info to identity thieves and scammers and more, they get rid of it for you. They have identity theft protection. Aura monitors your personal data, including your social security number, across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to alert you about potential identity theft. You have every adult on the count up to 5 get $1 million in identity theft insurance to help cover eligible losses and fees with a total up to $5 million in coverage. They have 24/7 United States-based support. Around the clock, U.S. fraud specialists are available to help. It's all in one app, one affordable price, okay? I'm not leaving my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. And if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/redacted to try 2 weeks for free. And by the way, in that 2 weeks that you get for free, it'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data has been exposed. Again, all you need to do is go there, aura.com/redacted. Stop leaving yourself vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. Go to our sponsor, aura.com/redacted. Get a 14-day free trial and see if any of your data has been exposed.
Well, the Telegraph reports that left-wing parties are more unpopular now than any time since the Cold War. The newspaper analyzed 73 democracies, and they found that leftist parties suffered a record low average vote across just 45.4% in each democracy's latest election, meaning nobody's voting for leftist policies anymore except the people who are not paying attention. They don't really seem to know why this is. They give just sort of one little curt reason about it, but we're going to look at their analysis anyway. This is a little confusing for those of us who are Americans because in the UK, where the Telegraph is published, blue is right wing and red is left wing. So if you're an American, you're used to seeing these colors as flipped. So we're going to have to flip it in our mind if we are able. So let's try. So if we're looking at the left, which again is red, what we're seeing here is a peak in the mid 2000s, which I would probably call the Barack Obama effect, which other democracies were able to ride, wouldn't you say? The Barack Obama effect of the mid 2008, and then we see a precipitous drop ever since, starting in 2012. The leftist parties regained some strength in 2019 during the pandemic when leftist leaders became media darlings and seized power, not really earning it, and then a huge drop since. So they say that the one exception is the government of Keir Starmer, who still has a slim 54% majority, but for how long? Now, the article runs down these leftist leaders who have fallen from grace: Jacinda Ardern, Justin Trudeau, Emmanuel Macron, Olaf Scholz, and they don't really say why. It seems like they can't really figure it out. They just give this one explanation, this one political scientist saying the trend is up and there's no reason to expect it will stop anytime soon. And then this other think tank director saying that it's the globalization-driven decline of organized labor, rising identity politics harnessed more successfully by the right than the left, and a general tendency among leftist leaders to fragment rather than unite. I would say that's willfully ignorant gobbledygook, and it's very easy to see why people started to vote against the left. So I'll take a stab at it. Here's my list. Okay, the left has championed war, crushed economies to do so, racism for the sake of anti-racism, divisive identity politics, government spending that crushed the middle and lower class, unquestioned biopharmaceutical power, destroyed women's rights to single-sex spaces, promoted the agenda of perverts. That's one of my big ones over science. Lowered the standard of education, keeping the most disadvantaged people disadvantaged. Allowed crime to run rampant. Open borders. Trafficked children and sex workers under the nose of law enforcement. Censored and slandered anyone who pointed out any of the above. Do you have anything to add? Why the left is losing power, or is that a pretty complete list?
That's pretty good. It's hard for me to. Did you mention censorship?
I believe I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you mention genocide? You mentioned war. You mentioned genocide.
I did. Sex trafficking.
Sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pedophiles, perverts.
Yeah. All of that.
Gender
insider stock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Insider stock trading.
Oh, I didn't mention that. No.
Okay. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi, insider stock trading, which, by the way, Biden mentioned.
Well, the
last
right
night
does
in his
that
farewell
too.
address.
We cannot let them off the hook for that. So
that's true.
Yeah.
But Nancy Pelosi stock picks. Yeah. I think it's a pretty good list.
Okay. Yeah. That's why the left is losing power, I would say, not this sort of gobbledygook of a, think tank. But let me know what you think, because it's funny that it's happening, and it's even funnier that the media can't figure out why it's happening and give us this crazy excuse.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to hear like Biden last night in his farewell address, almost trying to. He's sort of shocked at why we're so divisive in the United States right now. And turns out when you go after your political enemies, you weaponize the Department of Justice, you weaponize pieces of the government to go after your political enemies.
Oh, yeah, I did not include that one. Two-party justice system. Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
It just miffs me that when we saw Kamala do it, and now we're seeing Biden do it, of like, here are these huge problems that in 4 years I didn't address. I'm just going to take care of them. Like, I'm just going to talk about them right here at my last minute in power. Now I'm going to mention these things that we've known about and have done nothing to stop.
Yes, you're right. The one that caught our eye was insider stock trading, that we must ban Congress from doing that. Sir, you had the executive power to do it and chose not to for 4 years. So it's crazy to say that on the way out the door.
Your leader of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, was like the worst offender of this. I mean, how many other members of Congress were also dumping stocks before big, chip deals that you had with the CHIPS Act and all of this? Like, really? Yeah. And you're going to get up there on your farewell address and pretend like we're going to go out. You should have gone after these people.
You guys ever see the jerk where he's walking out? He's like, I don't need this. I don't need you. I don't need anything. Oh, I need this. I need this chair, this remote control. It's like, I didn't do this, but I'm going to do this and this on my way out.
Yeah.
You guys remember that?
I mean, yeah.
I didn't see that.
I think
Steve Martin.
It's more like Chris Farley when he's. It's more like Chris Farley in Billy Madison, where he's like, no, it didn't happen, but it'd be cool if it did.
Yeah, there was something else he said last night that stood out to me too. He talked about crimes in office. He said we shouldn't, have members of the government committing crimes while in office. We need to make it so that presidents can't commit crimes while they're in office. No one's above the law. I'm like, okay, really? Are you? What about your sons?
Unless they're senile when they're investigated by the Justice Department. Yeah.
While you're the Vice President of the United States,
right?
Literally trying to cover for your son and taking millions of dollars from the Chinese. Yeah. Okay. Really?
Oh, here's one thing I missed is alliance with globalists like the WEF, the WHO, Davos, all of those. Yeah, the left seems to have really liked that. And there's a populist rejection of those sort of cabalist movements. Now, we don't know that people on the right who are taking power are not aligned, and we need to watch for it. Absolutely. So, let us know if you have other reasons why people are so vehemently rejecting leftist leaders in their countries.
I love the comments today. Thank you guys. By the way, thank you guys for all subscribing to the show. We can have this free flow of ideas back and forth, and we can have arguments here. Thank you guys for subscribing, whether you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, free speech platform of Rumble, and also on X. Thank you guys, and to all of you guys watching on Beck TV. Thank you guys as well. What about Muir Diesel says Kamala being elected but not by the people? What about?
Oh, yeah.
What about, Democrats not using the voting process to elect their leaders?
Right.
Like sidestepping an election.
Like we saw in Austria and Germany that, yes, this populist party won, but we're not going to allow them to form a government.
Yeah. William McLaughlin says Clayton is getting negative. Does that mean something? I'm not negative. I'm actually don't side with William. I'm your husband for crying out.
I'm dogpiling.
You're supposed to support your husband. No, I'm not negative. I'm more of like a positive. I'm usually like a glass half full kind of person. I'm just saying on the whole China thing, like let's just slow our roll on that and hold back on our enthusiasm about that. I think sticking to the whole issue with Congress banning TikTok is the real story here, and I agree with Philip on that. So I'm not being negative. And I think it's great that
we'll discuss it off camera.
No, I think it's great that those people are like, hey, we don't hate you and we don't hate you. Like, yes, more love, more non-hate. Let's not go to war. Because that's exactly what they want. By 2026, they want us to go to war with China. They've already tabletop exercised the whole damn thing. Yeah. So it's much easier if we hate China. It's much easier if we hate the Chinese people. It'd be easier for us to go to war, right, over Taiwan. So I'm not negative, William. I'm a loving person.
Do you want an opportunity to do that? Because there was a comment just now that said Natali is so annoying. You can dogpile that one if you want.
Don't ever say that about my wife.
That's how I should have responded.
Don't ever say that. Camera one, don't ever say that about my wife. She's not annoying. Don't ever say that. She's a lovely
she
lady.
Is annoying.
I saw someone in the chat say, "Uh-oh, Clayton. Natali put her hands on her hips."
Just like right now.
Yeah. Oh no! Look out!
All right. Marital squabble.
Coming up, Dan Cohen is going to be here because he's done actual journalism, which is rare these days. Not for him, but for most journalists who work in the legacy media. So you know how a few weeks ago we were told that under the Syrian regime of Assad that there were mass graves. They were telling us without any evidence whatsoever. Really? Now that ISIS and Al-Qaeda have taken over Syria, our new friends in the Biden administration. So Assad was the bad guy and there's mass graves everywhere, but they didn't show us any evidence whatsoever. So Dan Cohen really dug into this for the past few weeks. He's been working on this. He's gotten to the bottom and exposing this whole mass graves story. And we're going to get to the bottom of that with Dan in just a moment.
But first, we want to remind you that Redacted is brought to you by Buy Optimizers. And this is a great way to prioritize your health this new year. If you are still on your New Year's resolutions, now is a good time to think about how you stick with your workouts, how you recover better from your workouts, and how you sleep better. And experts agree that magnesium is the best way to do this. Magnesium is essential for managing stress and maintaining a calm, balanced mood. Clayton, but most people
unbalanced
maintain a positive mood. Clayton,
Natali.
However, most people are magnesium deficient, which can lead to a poor stress response and fatigue and even poor sleep quality. Magnesium Breakthrough helps balance your levels so you can better handle the stress of your day-to-day life. And it's a unique blend of magnesium citrate, glycinate, and taurate, and ensures maximum absorption by utilizing your cells. So it's a comprehensive formula that supports everything from relaxation to energy production, so you can power through without burning out. So don't let stress get in the way of your New Year's goals. For your exclusive offer, head on over to buyoptimizers.com/redacted, just like you see written out on your screen. Use the code redacted and you'll save 10% off at checkout. And if you subscribe, you'll not only get amazing discounts and free gifts, but you'll also make sure your monthly supply is guaranteed. So one more time, use the code redacted when you head on over to buyoptimizers.com/redacted.
Well, it's been a few weeks since the fall of the Assad government in Syria. And of course, right away after the CIA worked with Al-Qaeda to install the new government in Syria, there were immediate news reports about mass graves, 150,000 people killed at the hands of Assad, mass graves. And they even showed video on the news, which was just a field. Just a wide open field. Seemed like they had zero evidence at the time in their news reports, but of course the Mockingbird media ran with the story, Assad's mass graves. Thank goodness Al-Qaeda is here to save the day. Al-Qaeda terrorists now running Syria. Well, Dan Cohen, independent journalist with Uncaptured Media, didn't buy the story at the time, so he spent weeks diving into the evidence of these so-called mass graves, and what he found is pretty eye-opening. So we invited Dan to join us here on the show. Dan, one of the few journalists in the world actually doing real journalism. So great to see you, Dan. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you, Clayton.
So immediately, I mean, you were calling BS almost immediately because the media was running with this mass grave story and they weren't showing us any evidence at all, just telling us, like they did in Ukraine, of course, with massacres at the hands of the Russian soldiers without any evidence. Of course, they just run with these stories, and then we're all supposed to swallow it and go about our day. But what stood out to you as problematic with those initial reports?
Well, what I said at the time is that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And these claims of 150,000 of Assad's victims buried in a single field. Well, we saw a field, drone footage of a field, but there was no actual evidence. There was nothing being exhumed. The dirt didn't even appear to have been disturbed. So there was just no evidence. And there were numerous claims of mass graves like that. And so I just decided, well, I would not be surprised if there are real mass graves in Syria. I mean, the country has just gone through a 13, 14-year dirty war where all kinds of militant groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and all kinds of offshoots have terrorized the country. And the Syrian army, what was the Syrian army, fought back. And so, of course, there are many, many deaths. And knowing the nature of these terrorist groups, well, it would not be surprising if there are mass graves. But we weren't hearing anything about those. We were just hearing these poorly sourced stories about Assad's mass graves and pretending that ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they didn't do anything. They didn't even exist in these stories. It was just the Syrian Popular Democratic Revolution. So what I did is I just went through every bit of evidence I examined the stories that were being presented and found that there was essentially no evidence that these sites were mass graves. And then I went and examined every bit of evidence I could find of mass graves in Syria throughout the country, regardless of who is the perpetrator. And what I found is a completely different picture, as you can imagine, that was then what was portrayed in the mainstream media. In particular, I found there are numerous mass graves throughout the country in areas controlled by what is now HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and used to be known as Jabhat al-Nusra, when it was officially the ISIS affiliate in Syria, and then became the Al-Qaeda affiliate. And I'll just call them HTS for simplicity's sake. HTS has numerous mass graves, and ISIS have numerous mass graves, particularly in eastern Syria, which was under its control, and also in Idlib province, where the so-called revolution sprung forth from. For example, there is a place called the Al-Ahm Death Hole, it became known as, which was just a rock quarry. And in the early part of the dirty war in Syria, HTS began dumping bodies of Syrian soldiers that they had captured and killed and often beheaded there, Shia civilians, anyone they accused of blasphemy or adultery or sorcery. Anybody that they just decided to kill was thrown into this hole. And sometimes they would blindfold the victims alive, place them in front of the hole, and tell them, okay, you're free, run for your freedom. And then, of course, they'd fall to their death. This was the practice that HTS did. So this mass grave is still there, and it's never been properly investigated. And there's no appetite in the West to examine this. And it's the same case in eastern Syria, around Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor in particular. The most shocking example of a mass grave out there is in what's called the Al-Huta Gorge, which used to be this nice hiking spot and tourist destination until Al-Nusra, now HTS, took over, and then ISIS took over from it, and HTS actually began using this gorge as a mass grave, where they would do the same practice. They would just dump bodies in there, first of Syrian soldiers, then anyone else that they murdered. And no one knows how many mass graves there are, or how many bodies are in this mass grave. There are claims that there are even thousands in this gorge, and there's no appetite in the West to examine this stuff. And and there's video of it. This has been documented by Western human rights groups like Human Rights Watch, that actually flew a drone down into this grave after ISIS was defeated by the U.S.-backed coalition to defeat ISIS. This area was, of course, liberated, and until 2019 was held by the U.S.-backed Kurdish forces, the SDF. And then in 2019, when the U.S., then the Trump administration, approved a Turkish invasion of northeastern Syria, that area became under basically Turkish control of what is called the Syrian National Army, but is actually just a proxy for Turkey. So ever since 2019, that area, this gorge, and a whole bunch of other mass graves nearby have been under control of a Turkish proxy, of a NATO proxy, yet there is no appetite to examine this, to exhume these graves, to figure out, to hold those accountable, like Turkey, who was funding ISIS and supporting ISIS and facilitating its fighters, going back and forth and arming them and buying their oil. There's no appetite for this. So
yeah, it's strange why there's no international appetite. I mean, we certainly had that in Rwanda and against Slobodan Milosevic. Obviously what happened in Yugoslavia under the Clinton administration and so forth from NATO. So there was mass international outcry to get, UN officials, UN grave, I don't know, examiners to come in and exhume bodies and DNA tests and everything else. But here, they don't want to know about it.
Right, exactly. The same there's a neighborhood in southern Damascus called Tadamun, which early on was kind of a front line in the battle. And that there is the only instance I could find of a Syrian army, what was the Syrian army, mass grave, was there in this neighborhood, Tadamun. And that has been widely reported. The U.S. government-funded organization, the New Lines Institute, along with the Guardian and another European kind of anti-government outlet, they published a video of Syrian soldiers killing people and throwing them to this grave. Now, when that came out, it was a huge. That came out a few years ago, and this happened in 2013. Finally, the video comes out in 2022, I believe. That became a huge story in the Western media. And when Assad fell a few weeks ago, Human Rights Watch went to the site and documented what was there. Okay, great. There was also an HTS mass grave in that same neighborhood in Tadamun, but nobody has bothered to go examine it. And this is well reported. If I can find it on the internet, certainly Human Rights Watch researchers or anyone else can, or New York Times reporters. So all of these reporters, news reporters, and human rights figures swarming around Damascus, they're just totally ignoring this stuff. And they ignore one mass grave and go to another, because this is not about mass graves. This is about a political agenda of portraying Assad as this Hitler-like mad dictator and making Al-Qaeda, HTS, appear as this popular, revolution that is for all Syrians. And really, this is part of a concocted plan going back to 2011 by an organization called CIJA, the Center for International Justice and Accountability, which is funded by the U.S. government and European Union countries. That when the Syrian crisis started in early 2011, March 2011, it was birthed at the same time. And the whole idea was, we are going to convict Assad. We are going to, we've already convicted him. He's guilty. Now we just have to come up with the evidence. They put the cart before the horse. So,
right.
So what they did is they crafted evidence as much as they could. Some of it faked. So this is part of this whole process. So CIJA, there's a former U.S. government official who was on the ground in Syria right after the collapse, going to these alleged mass graves of 150,000 people, saying, "Oh, these are the worst crimes since the Holocaust, and we must punish Assad," and all of this stuff, but ignoring mass graves. So this has nothing to do with justice for Syrian people, or for anyone who's wondering what happened to their loved one, their family member who's trying to find some closure or maybe human remains so they could have a proper funeral. This is about destroying Syrian sovereignty, erasing history, and normalizing the HTS regime.
Yeah, even this week we've seen videos emerging of Al-Qaeda, HTS, going through multiple 1,000-year-old museums and just destroying Sumerian statues and Syrian history that goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's just heartbreaking. Blowing up museums, basically trying to erase all of Syrian history here. Deeply, deeply disturbing. Of course, we're seeing videos, Christians being attacked in Syria, killed, mauled in public. I'm sure those people are probably thrown in these same mass graves. See videos emerging of women who allegedly had an affair and then are, begging for their lives in a public square, asking to speak to their children one last time before they're shot in the head, and then probably thrown in one of these mass graves. But no one in the international community is calling for an investigation. No major body. Where's the UN? Where's NATO? Where's Human Rights Watch? Where are any of these organizations? The silence is deafening to me, and to you as well, I think.
Oh, it's amazing to watch this roll out. I mean, it's heartbreaking and infuriating, but it just says everything about how completely corrupt our system is. How human rights is actually a weapon. It's not actually about human rights. It's not about mass graves. It's not about international accountability or justice. It's about implementing a system of control and extraction of wealth, and that does not benefit most people, and any lie, any deception is justified in order to achieve that goal.
Well, I would encourage our audience to go over. Dan's done a great job on this story and so many others. And of course, I'd go back a few weeks and read Dan's pieces on how Al-Qaeda went from Al-Qaeda, the terrorist organization, to Pal-Qaeda, basically a friend of the Biden administration now, and the CIA and deep state, who wants to fund them, of course, and carry out these regime change operations. Dan, great to see you. One of the few journalists, one of the great journalists in the world. I encourage you to go over to Uncaptured Media. Follow Dan on multiple streaming platforms, multiple video platforms, and subscribe over there as well. Dan, great to see you as always.
Thanks so much, Clayton.
Thanks so much, Dan. Always appreciate it. Hey, programming note, Monday, of course, is the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, and we are going to have a special broadcast on that morning. So instead of our normal 4 p.m. Eastern show, we are going to start way earlier during the inauguration ceremonies, before noon Eastern time, of course, is when it all happens. So we will be here. Please watch us live. We'll be watching the ceremony unfold. Any sort of breaking news that happens during that day, we're going to have special guests who will be at the inauguration in Washington, D.C., joining us live. So yes, turn off legacy media and please join us here, independent media, and be a part of our show. Don't forget to subscribe to our show now. Just hit the subscribe button, whether you're on Rumble, whether on YouTube or on X. And then also you can turn on the little bell notification as well to be notified as soon as we go live on Monday morning for the inauguration special edition of Redacted. So it's going to be a very interesting morning, to be sure. And we will be here live for the whole thing. So please join us. We really, really appreciate it. And also, we have our daily newsletter, which we'd love for you to subscribe to as well, and that's totally free. Just go to redacted.inc and click on the subscribe to the newsletter button there, and you'll be all set up and ready to go come Monday morning. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on this special edition of Redacted. Well, today, I guess every edition is special because it's all sorts of crazy news that we've got to follow. But thank you guys so much. We'll be back on Monday for our special edition, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump to his second term. It's going to be a crazy, crazy day. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you Monday.